Good afternoon and welcome to Indie Business Radio. We're here to empower you to enjoy your life, build your business, and have it your way. Don't adjust your volume or clean out your ears. This isn't really Donna Marie's voice you're hearing today. It's Kayla Fiorvanti of Essential Wholesale sitting in for Donna Marie. She's off today to tape a segment with award-winning journalist Michelle Martin on National Public Radio. Today's show is sponsored by Shea Radiance Supplies, 100% natural, unrefined shea butter, no chemicals or additives, Africa's best. Learn more at www.shearadianceSupplies.com. As we move through this most eventful election year, I'm reminded over and over again about the importance of leadership. Thinking back to the days before 9/11, I remember President Bush exercising his role as leader to help us through the tragedy. Fast forward to today when his confidence ratings is lower than ever. This makes me think about leadership styles and how it is that a leader is cherished and revered one moment and then all but forgotten the next. To be sure, there are several books out there on the topic of leadership, and as indie business owners, we must constantly be aware of how we are leading ourselves, our families, and our customers. With so much riding on our ability to lead effectively, we need to learn as much as we can about it. According to today's guest, Chris Widener, leadership is an art. Chris Widener is a successful businessman, author, speaker, and television host. He has authored over 450 articles and 9 books, including a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller. He has produced over 85 CDs and DVDs on leadership, motivation, and success. Chris is the host of national interview show Made for Success and co-host of True Performance with Zig Ziglar. Chris is also a featured columnist for Success Magazine. He's the author of a just-released book, The Art of Influence. Persuading Others Begins with You. Chris joins us from his office in Issaquah, Washington. Chris, welcome to Indie Business Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Certainly. Well, if you would have a question for or a comment for Chris, do so by joining us at 800-773-0355. So, Chris, tell me about yourself and about your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. I grew up without the best of starts. I ended up kind of going off astray growing up and got myself turned around right as I was leaving high school because I really kind of figured out, you know what, now life begins, and I hadn't made the most of it growing up, but I didn't have anybody that had really taught me what it was like to be successful or to be an entrepreneur, to own a business. I had lots of dreams and, you know, like everybody does, but I had no idea how to go about achieving them. And so I've been on this quest for 25 years to determine what's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. Why is it that some people succeed and other people don't succeed? And through my own trials and errors, through the people that I've ended up working with, colleagues, and then through my writing and my interview shows, I've been able to really look into the lives of successful people and find out what it is that enabled them to start their businesses, to grow their businesses, to become successful, and applying those in my writing and the business that I own, where we develop audio programs and sell them through Costco and Sam's Club, Borders, Barnes & Noble, all that kind of thing. That's kind of been the journey, is figuring out what it is that enables some people to be successful and other people to not be successful, and then trying to put that into a form in writing and in audio programs, video programs, television, to enable other people to look into the secrets of the people who've succeeded.
Well, excellent. I read your book last night and enjoyed it quite a bit. Can you tell me, why do you believe this book is so important? You know, there's a lot of leadership books, and what makes this one different?
Well, I think a couple of things that make it different. In fact, Publishers Weekly gave us a very nice review, and one of the things that they said was nice about it was that it was short, which I believe is really helpful to a lot of people nowadays. With all of the overwhelming amounts of information that comes our way, it's nice to be able to sit down and pick something up and read through it in a short amount of time and get some good wisdom out of it, but also because it's a story. most leadership books now are not. They're nonfiction, and this one is fiction. I actually call it faction because it has facts woven into it. But for somebody who's looking to learn some new things, they want to grow, they want to develop their leadership, but they just know that they're not going to sit down and take the time to wade through 300 pages worth of stuff. This is a great little book to be able to pick up and read. So just on a surfacey level, that's one reason why it's important and why it's a great book for people to pick up. But the other gets to the very foundation of what the core message is of the book, and that is most leadership books talk about what you're supposed to do. And this book talks about what you're supposed to be. And it's not that we shouldn't have books that teach us what to do, because obviously we need to know what to do. But I think that one of the things that a lot of books miss out on is what we need to be. What kinds of internal character traits need to be developed? What kinds of things need to drive us from the inside? And so that's why the subtitle, Persuading Others, begins with you. Because a lot of people, I mean, you read about it in the paper almost every single day, some leader who had great skills, but they're undermined by their character, and eventually they're bounced from office or bounced from their being a minister or, whatever their position was, bounced from their company, because ultimately they focused so much on what they were doing and they were forgetting about who they were and what they were being. And ultimately the relationship between a leader and a follower is one of trust. And if people don't trust us, then they're not going to follow us. So I think that that's probably the really most important part about the book, that this is about who you are as a leader, not just what you do.
Excellent. And tell me, how did you narrow down to the four golden rules?
Well, I travel all around the world giving a speech called Winning with Influence, How to Win at Life by Being an Influencer. And in fact, in a couple of weeks I'm going to Russia, and a couple of weeks after that I'm going to Australia and all over the U.S. And I teach 12 basic principles in our audio program, Winning with Influence. But over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, in my interaction with the people that I coach, the high-level CEOs and top salespeople and political figures, as well as through the things that I found were really resonating with the people that I was speaking to in my seminars, I narrowed down to those four because I found that they were the ones that were most implemented in the lives of successful people, and that most resonated with the people who were listening to the talks.
Okay. Do you believe that anyone can be a good leader? What if they're shy or retiring? Do you think they can still be an effective leader?
Absolutely. In fact, I love the fact that you said, what about somebody who's shy? Because when I first graduated from college, I moved out to work for a nonprofit group in northern New Jersey, working with high schoolers and kids who were trying to get their start in life, and I was put on the board of this nonprofit mainly because I was a young kid and they wanted a young kid on there. I certainly at this point was not qualified to probably be on this board, but they put me on there anyway to have a voice of the youth or whatever. And I served on this board with the former CEO of Sealand Corporation, the future CEO of Mars Candies, the number 3 guy at ExxonMobil. I mean, just all these very, very powerful business leaders. And the first thing I noticed about them was that there wasn't a gregarious one in the bunch. There wasn't one of them that was a typical, grinning and gripping, glad-handing people, loud, boisterous person. There wasn't amongst any of them. And so that was really an interesting lesson to me right out of the gate coming out of college, was that you didn't have to be a loud, boisterous, extrovert who could work a room in order to be a leader. And I think that that's one of the nice things about this book, is that when you go through the golden rules and you look and see the qualities that are inside of a great leader, there are things, yes, that can be learned. That was one of your questions, is can it be learned? Absolutely. Anybody can learn to influence more and better. But that you don't have to be some sort of an outgoing personality in order to be a leader. Anybody can learn to influence more. And influence starts with who we are, and then, of course, it includes some things that we do, learning how to persuade other people.
Right. Okay. Well, I liked the term how you called your book a faction.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that, the format of the book. How did you choose to write it in that format? So many leadership books are written in first person from the perspective of the author, but you did it totally different.
Yeah, well, that stems from two of my previous books, and the first book that I really wanted to write as a breakout book was called The Angel Inside, Michelangelo's Secrets for Following Your Passion and Finding the Work You Love, which became a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller. And it was back when Da Vinci Code was really popular, and I thought, well, I want to write, something that'll be a breakout book that people will read. And I thought, well, there were three guys that lived in Florence, Italy at the same time, Da Vinci and Michelangelo, and then Machiavelli. I didn't want to write about Machiavelli, so I settled on Michelangelo and developed this whole theory and read all these things, all the history and the facts about Michelangelo. And then I had a couple of friends who gave me some great advice. They're both authors. And they, on separate occasions, one of them said, Chris, whatever you do, make it short. People don't want to read big, long books. And the second guy said, Chris, you know what you ought to do? You ought to make it fiction. And I thought, that would be really interesting. So I went into a Barnes & Noble, and I looked at a Ken Blanchard book, 1 Minute Manager, or one of those books, added up the words on one page, multiplied by pages, and found out it was 18,000. So I decided my book would be 18,000 words long, and then I just had to come up with some sort of a backstory to put these facts and these lessons into a story. And so that was my first book that I wrote that way. It was so successful. I wrote another book called 12 Pillars of Success, and then this book I decided just to follow the format because people really liked it, and I'm sort of starting to become known for a person who writes these kinds of books. These books have been written for a long period of time, these kinds of books. Og Mandino, who was one of the editors of Success magazine 30-some years ago, and a great speaker and author himself, he's no longer with us, but he wrote books like The Greatest Salesman in the World and The Choice, and so these books, these kinds of books have been around for a long time. Of course, Ken Blanchard has written a lot of them, and so it's not new, but a lot of people have not read them yet.
Right, and it's an enjoyable change when you're in the business world and you spend so much time reading business books.
Yeah.
It's nice to read a fiction, but that applies to you.
Yeah, so. And this particular book, some of the faction in there is interesting. The airplane scene. There's a scene inside of an airplane, and that actually is based on the inside of a real billionaire's airplane, who I was fortunate enough to be invited down to be able to take a look at it, and so you actually see some of the things that some very successful people, how they live their lives, and so a lot of these things are based on real specific situations, but I turn them into fictional accounts.
Well, that leads me actually to my next question. How did you decide that it was going to be the grandmother who gave your main character Marcus the gift?
I just thought it would come way out of left field. You got to have some stuff that just comes out of left field in fiction to sort of help develop the story. And so, as it was, he was a kid who he had no connection to that kind of wealth. He had no connection to that kind of big business types of people, and so I had to create some way that somebody was going to be able to allow him the opportunity to have access to it. And I thought, this is something that would be interesting. This mysterious gift that gets given to him that's drawn from 30 or 40 years ago, and so it's fiction. I just made it up. That's the nice thing about fiction. You can, and as long as you tell people it's fiction, not like James Frey who got in trouble with Oprah. As long as you tell people it's fiction, then you can get away with some things.
Well, it works well because I was like, what's the gift? What's the gift? I wanted to know as I was reading. So, well, it's time for us to take a break. And if you would like to call in during one of our next segments and have a question or comment for Chris, feel free to do so by calling 1-800-773-0355. This is Kayla for Indie Business Radio, taking our break.
Why is everyone listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com? Because it's the future of talk radio. Every day, more and more people are finding Internet radio as not just an alternative media, but as a replacement to traditional AM and FM broadcast stations. Internet radio offers a wider variety of programs, convenient on-demand listening that meets your schedule, and fewer commercial interruptions. And GlobalTalkRadio.com is already leading the way by matching this content with a highly targeted Internet audience. GlobalTalkRadio.com offers its listeners one of the widest programming varieties on the Internet, from business and finance to self-improvement, paranormal, health, literature, romance, politics, and more. There are also opportunities for prospective hosts who would like to host their own weekly or one-time talk shows. Want to learn more? Check us out at www.globaltalkradio.com and see the future of talk radio today.
This is Kayla Fiorvanti sitting in for Donna Marie on Indie Business Radio, and we are speaking today with Chris Widener, and we're talking about his new book, The Art of Influence. The book just came out July 8th. Chris, can you tell me how is it doing all right so far?
Yeah, it's doing great. We launched on July 8th, and we climbed up the charts on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble as people began to buy it. We cracked the top 10 on Amazon, and spent the week at number 3 and 4 on Barnes & Noble, and on both of them we were the number 1 business book that week out on both of those sites. And so we expect this week to hit both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal best-selling list. So it's doing quite well.
Well, it's an honor to have you here on Indie Business Radio, especially since our audience are people who are in business for themselves. So let's talk about the 4 golden rules of influence that your book is centered around. Can you just run me through them?
Sure. We call them the golden rules. We'll tip our hand a little bit to the people who are thinking about buying the book over at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. The main character's name is Bobby Gold, and he's a brash sort of billionaire who I think he's the 10th richest man in America in the book, and he's teaching this young business school graduate what business is really like and how you really influence people. And so he calls them the golden rules of influence. He brands everything around his name, a la Donald Trump or Richard Branson, and so the 4 golden rules. The first one is to live a life of integrity. The second one is to always maintain a positive, optimistic attitude. The third one is to consider other people's interests more important than your own. And then the last one is to have high personal standards of excellence. And all of these things are things that people can work on themselves. It's not something that you do to other people. It's something that we work on ourselves. We can view it as an issue of personal growth. Excellent.
And so in the living a life of undivided integrity, in that section, can you just give us a little bit more in depth on that point?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of, as I go out and I speak, in fact, I was in Salt Lake City this last weekend, and I did this with the audience. I said, how many of you think, based on reading the newspapers or watching the television or, whatever, would say that we, and this isn't just politics, but politics, business, religion, etc. How many of you would say we really need to up our integrity in our leadership? And all the hands go up. Yeah, it seems like every single day we see some new leader who has failed or done something illegal or is being arrested or whatever. So everybody's hand goes up. Then I ask a follow-up question. I say, okay, how many of you, speaking only for yourself, answering only for yourself, how many of you would say you have little or no integrity? And I've asked that question of hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, and I've never had anybody raise their hand and say, that's me, no integrity. So what's interesting is that everybody sees the need for better integrity. But no one thinks that they need to have better integrity. Nobody, they all see themselves as people of integrity. And that gets down to a really interesting thing about human psychology, and that is that we give ourselves more grace than other people give us. When we see something that we've done wrong, we consider it a mistake. It's a mistake because we know our intentions. But other people, when they see us make a mistake or do something, that's off a little bit, they look at us and they think, oh, that person has a lack of integrity. They see it with little more harsher eyes than we see it in ourselves. Of course, when we look at other people and they do the same thing we do, we are not quite as graceful with them. So it's really important for us to understand as leaders the idea that we have got to live with integrity as an example, because the people who are following us are not going to give us as much grace as we might give ourselves. And that comes down to this idea of undivided integrity. And I use the word undivided very purposely there, because the fact is that if you take the root word of integrity and you go back down to the root of it, it shares the same root with the word integer, which is an old math term. And an integer, if people can remember their high school math, and I guess now they're teaching it in junior high, an integer is a whole number. The root word of integrity literally means whole, or undivided. It means it's singular, it's not plural. It means we live our lives in a singular manner based on morals and ethics and values, as opposed to a divided manner. Let me just put it more simply. It means you don't tell the truth in some situations and lie in other situations. It means you don't treat some people one way and treat other people another way. It means you don't declare some of your income for income tax purposes and hide other parts of your income for income tax purposes. It means that you operate singularly based out of your morals and values. And so if you were to take a circle and just a full circle, that circle would have integrity because it's whole. But if you draw a line through it, that now has been divided and it no longer has integrity by the very definition. So the thing that we have to do as leaders is we have to look and say, what are the divisions in my life? Where am I operating differently in different situations? Where am I doing one thing in one situation but operating out of a different set of ethics and values and morals in another situation? Because when we find those things and we correct them and we bring them back into balance and make them congruent with one another, then we're going to eliminate those things that other people are looking at and seeing as a lack of integrity.
Now, I loved how you handled it in the book, and I won't give away what happens, but I loved how in the book it seemed like such an off moment for the guy. He wasn't even thinking that he was doing something wrong,
yeah.
But he was doing in front of people who saw what he had done, and it changes how
yeah.
they perceive him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I in the book I actually made it something that a lot of people wouldn't consider a very bad thing. I didn't want to make it something really bad, because if you made it really bad, then everybody would agree, oh yeah, that's really bad. Who would do business with that person? So I made it something that a lot of people may not view as bad, but I wanted to do it specifically to show the point that that this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be looking for in ourselves and in other leaders, is people who are not going to have those little breakdowns of integrity, because ultimately little breakdowns become big breakdowns. Little cracks, going back to the word integrity, my mom used to work at the mechanical engineering department in University of Washington when I was growing up, and she worked with the grad students, and they had a lot of students who came from all over the world to the state of Washington to study hydroelectric dams. And one of the things that they were always looking for was the integrity of the structure. So the word integrity is used in structural engineering, mechanical engineering as well. They're always looking for the integrity of a structure. And one of the grad students who I got to know a little bit was studying the effect of cracks on the hydroelectric dams. And, a little tiny crack that's 1 inch wide, or not wide, 1 inch long, might not seem like much on the Grand Coulee Dam. But they've got to deal with that little tiny crack, because what happens to little tiny cracks that are left unchecked? They become big cracks, and it's big cracks that bring down businesses. It's big cracks that bring down relationships. It's big cracks that bring down political careers and those kinds of things. But all of them start as little cracks. As I like to say, I don't think anybody just walked into Enron one day and said, hey, we've got $500 million in the bank, let's rip it off. I think probably if you could peer into those people's lives, you'll see that it started out by stealing stamps in the mailroom, pocketing some extra stamps, and then as they got a credit card, a business credit card. They padded their expense account, and it just became bigger and bigger and bigger, and they had never learned the ethics and morals and values, or had, at least maybe even if they'd learned them, had never applied them to themselves. And all of a sudden they're looking at, $1 billion in a bank account they think they can skim off the top, and away you go. And it started by making the wrong decisions in the little situations. And that's what we're trying to help people understand, is that little problems become big problems if we don't take care of them as leaders.
Right. I thought you handled it very well. In your second golden rule, always demonstrate a positive attitude. I really enjoyed your character, Tom Martin, and how you applied this to sports. And tell me how you chose to go that direction.
Well, I know some people in Major League Baseball, and certainly I've worked with a number of different people in professional sports. I grew up, when I was growing up, I was a ball boy for the Seattle Supersonics, and although non-sports fans may not recognize the name, most sports fans will recognize the name Lenny Wilkens. He's the all-time winningest NBA coach, professional basketball coach, and Lenny was one of the finest guys, still is one of the finest guys you've ever met, and he was always a guy. I mean, I heard him give a tongue lashing or two when the guys were really way out there. So he had there were times he could let loose, but most of the time he was just such a positive, impactful person who built people up and encouraged them and worked with these young guys that were playing basketball, and so I've seen it. I've seen how the way we interact with people and the way we build people up and the way we have a positive attitude has a positive effect on our leadership. And negative people, they might be able to lead for a little while, but ultimately people don't like to follow negative people. It's interesting. You think about a guy who had the name Chainsaw Al, and he was a big, well-known business guy back in the 90s, and, whatever happened to Chainsaw Al? Well, he's on the trash heap of history because a couple businesses that he ran went into the ground, and now he's just sort of a name that we remember, and he would cut people down, and, he was just one of these guys that steamrolled over people and intimidated people, and for a while it worked, but then ultimately that act got tired and people didn't want to follow him, investors didn't want to invest in him, and those kinds of things. And so whether or not you're leading a professional baseball team, or you're leading a big corporation, or you're leading your family, or a small business, as a leader, we need to set the pace by the words that we use and the language we use and the attitude that we demonstrate to other people. And there's an old proverb that says that the tongue has the power of life and death, and the words that we speak to the people who work for us and work with us either breathe life into them or breathes death into them. It either builds them up or tears them down. And if we want to be great leaders, we have to be people who build people up.
Excellent. Well, we have a surprise caller on the line. We have Donna Marie calling in.
Hi. Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Kayla.
Hello.
You guys are doing such a fabulous job. Thank you so much. I just, thought it would be really cool to call into your own radio show. I've never done that. And I actually do have what I hope will be an interesting question, too, Chris. First of all, I love the book. I devoured it, absolutely devoured it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
We're glad you made it through the screener.
Well, I mean, it's such a great, just a wonderful, succinct example of how, that we can all follow. I have a question. I'm so glad you're talking about the positive attitude. But I want to ask you, Chris, how do you help people who are leaders of companies, but they're small businesses and they've never led really anything? They don't see themselves as leaders. Unlike Marcus, they didn't go to business school and they haven't been surrounded by people who, sort of drill, leadership ideas into their minds. How do you help someone who does, in fact, find themselves running a business, consider themselves as a leader, because so often they just don't start out seeing themselves that way?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, when I ask the question in my seminars, how many of you consider yourselves, great leaders? Hardly anybody ever raises their hand. Typically, one of the sort of downsides to all the leadership literature and all the books and things is most people equate leadership with generals of armies or presidents or leaders of big social movements like Martin Luther King or Gandhi. Most people don't view leadership as something that the average, ordinary person does. And one of my goals is to change all that, because I believe that everybody is already a leader in some situation or another, whether you're leading a Little League baseball team or you're leading your family or you're leading a business. We're all leading. But one of the things I try to do is I try to take it out of that realm of that big word leadership and use the word influence. If you don't view yourself as a leader, you can ask yourself, well, do you have influence? Who do you have influence in their lives? Who are you on a daily basis able to influence, or are you supposed to be influencing? And if you get stuck around that big word leadership, if you only view that as the big people, who lead these big things, fine. Look at yourself as an influencer. Where do you have influence? And how can you improve your influence? So if you have a little business and you have, 5 to 8 employees, you are the key influencer there. You're the person who's influencing all sorts of things. You're influencing the direction of the company. You're influencing the pricing structures. You're influencing the vision, the mission statement. You're influencing the culture of the organization. You're influencing how the team gets along with each other. You're influencing what the people will be doing on a day-by-day basis or what their job descriptions are, and you have the influence there. So one of the things I try to do is I try to take it out of that realm of leadership. If people just view that as something that's hard for them to get their minds around, I say, okay, fine. How do you influence? How do you have influence? And then I ask them to take a look and say, okay, how much influence do you have? When you speak or write or talk to people or engage with people, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do they respond? If your employees are just looking at you and rolling their eyes and walking off the other direction, that's a 1. If they jump up and down and say, thank you so much for asking me to do this, I'll go do it right now, that's a 10. Well, most people are somewhere in the middle there. Find out where you have influence, and you're going to have different influence with different people. And different levels of influence with different people. So sit down and take a look at the level of influence you have with people, and then start asking, okay, why is it? What's going on? What's the situation with that particular person? What's their situation? What's our situation? And start doing some analysis on how you could have some more influence with that person, how you could raise that number up so you have deeper and deeper influence with them.
Great answer. Very helpful. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you, Donna Marie, for joining us.
Yeah.
Kayla.
We are going to take a break now, and if anyone else would like to call in during the next segment, our phone number is, I've lost it, 1-800-773-0355.
Want to stay on top of what's new in the radio industry? Sign up for a free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio, available exclusively to listeners of globaltalkradio.com, and find out what's new in the world of online radio. Listeners can find out about new shows and special guests. People with something special to offer can find out how to become a guest and how to prepare for an interview. And prospective hosts will find a valuable resource for everything from planning their new program to selecting topics and guests, recouping expenses by selling advertising, and more. Sign up today for your free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio by visiting www.globaltalkradio.com and learn about the future of talk radio today.
This is Kayla at Indie Business Radio, sitting in for Donna Marie. I'm talking to Chris, the author of The Art of Influence, and we're just going over his 4 golden rules of influence. We've already talked a little bit about live a life of undivided integrity. That's number 1. Number 2, always demonstrate a positive attitude. And number 3 is consider other people's interests as more important than yours. in this one, I really enjoyed the story about the main character's daughter getting a job as a barista. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure, that's actually based on my own daughter. She got a job when she was 14 at a little local coffee shop here, making coffee, and she used to bring home, whatever her pay is, it's minimum wage up here, but then she'd bring home about $25 a day in cash. And after 4 or 6 weeks of doing that, all of a sudden she started bringing home about $75 a day in cash. So I brought her into my office, and I said, okay, what's the deal here? You're just selling coffee up there, right? What's the story? And she said, she said, I finally figured people out, Dad. And I said, oh, okay, it's kind of interesting to hear a 14-year-old say they finally figured people out. And I said, what's the story? And she said, people like to talk about themselves. And it reminded me of that old lesson from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and that is the sweetest sound on anybody's ear is their name. And people are interested in themselves. They like to talk about themselves. They want people to care about them. And so my daughter just started asking questions of them while she was making their coffee. What do you do? Where do you work? How long have you worked there? How do you like it? Are you married? Do you have kids? How'd your kids' baseball game go this weekend? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when she'd give the change back, all of a sudden, subconsciously, because she never said anything about it, but subconsciously, people were tipping her more. In fact, to the tune of 3 times as much. She increased her tips from $25 a day to $75 a day. And she gives the credit to specifically saying, just asking questions, taking care of other people, listening to them. It reminds me of that old quote that Zig Ziglar's been saying for decades now. You can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want out of life. And that's really true, that as leaders, we have people who show up at our place of employment every day, and not a whole lot of people care about them. They're not getting a lot of attention. They don't have people out there who are looking out for them. We live in a world where a lot of people are looking out for number one and, just taking care of themselves. And so as leaders, when we consider their interests as more important than our own, when we place other people first, some people have called it servant leadership, that attracts people to us. It makes them loyal to us. It makes them want to work for us. The old saying that people don't quit a job, they quit a boss. It's really true. That if we have a good relationship with people, if we care about them and they know that we care about them above and beyond simply what they can produce for us in a business setting, when we care about their lives and who they are and what their goals and dreams are and those kinds of things, when we take the time to really invest in them, we will gain influence and leadership into their lives way above and beyond anything that you've ever experienced before.
Now tell me, do people find this idea counterintuitive, that
absolutely.
They are trying to succeed and and they need to focus on other people? I find it very true in our business that our business is about our customers and it's about our employees, and we're along for the ride and enjoying the fruits of it, and having that focus makes it easier and less stressful on us and creates a family atmosphere.
Oh, yeah, it's totally counterintuitive. I mean, and I think people are coming around to it, and I think that the younger generation now is actually more community-oriented and some of those things. But when you go back to the 70s and 80s and look at the titles of the best-selling business books, Winning with Intimidation, Looking Out for Number One, there was this whole thing about how, you need to be this dictatorial, leader, and the guys back then, the famous business leaders had names like Neutron Jack and Chainsaw Al, and I don't think we need to nickname people after feathers and pillows now or anything, but we want strong people, but you can be strong and still care about other people, and that's what we're seeing in the most successful organizations now, is that there's a culture wherein people are more than just assets to the bottom line. There's an aspect in which they are cared for and a community sense built right into the culture.
Excellent. Now, on your fourth golden rule, don't settle for anything less than excellence. Actually, one of my very favorite quotes of the whole book comes in there. You say, every one of us starts out the same, about 7 pounds, 22 inches, and naked.
Yep.
From there, our lives are governed by our choices. If we make excellent choices, then we achieve even more excellence. Success begets success.
Yeah. You know, I used to be the chaplain for the local police department here. I did it on a volunteer basis. They never had anybody that helped the officers out in terms of death notifications and some of that stuff. And I used to spend a lot of time in a patrol car with the officers. I would just go out, and when I had some free time, I'd ride along with them. And you'd see people, and you'd see all these instances and situations in people's lives. And we used to discuss, how did these people end up there? You know, did they just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'll go try crack today for the first time? No, people don't just wake up one day and decide to do rotten things. I mean, I suppose every now and then that happens, but our lives, for better or for worse, are a sum of all the choices we make. And so as a police officer, you would see all these people who'd made repeatedly bad choices, most of which stem back into their childhood and oftentimes were driven by their parents' bad choices. But the reverse is also true, that success is a product of all the choices that we make. And so no matter where anybody is in their business right now, they can decide to become successful down the road, and it's simply by changing the choices we make and making choices that are based on excellence, choices that are based on being above average, above status quo, above mediocre, because people are attracted to excellence. You know, when was the last time you left a restaurant and said, terrible food, terrible service, let's come back next Wednesday? You know, you don't do that. You go back to the places that you like. We're attracted to it. Remember the old TV show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? You know, we're attracted to big homes and fancy cars and diamonds and travel, and there's never been a show called Lifestyles of the Poor and Destitute, unless you count Cops. I guess Cops kind of counts a little bit, but you know, we're not attracted to the negative. We're not attracted to substandard. We as people are attracted to excellence, and so as leaders, if we work on ourselves and improve everything from the first impression we make with people by the way we take care of ourselves and groom ourselves and speak and articulate ourselves, all the way to the deepest aspects of our intellectual life and our emotional life and our spiritual life and all those kinds of areas, when we raise that standard and become excellent, other people are attracted to us, and it makes influence and leadership easier.
So the last point I wanted to make sure that we talked about, it wasn't one of your 4 golden rules, but it's an excellent view into how to be a good salesperson or a good communicator. You talk about the difference between being a fisher or a hunter.
Yep.
You ask, you know, what would, if you had to choose between hunting and fishing, which would it be? Can you tell me a little bit about that whole idea?
Sure. You know, one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are afraid of leadership and sales, in particular sales, is because they're afraid that they got to go out and get people. You know, it's like, okay, now go get them, Tiger, and you know, you got to go out and eat people for lunch, and you know, get them, nail them, and take them down and pull their wallet out and take their money from them and make the sale, right? You know, people don't like to do that kind of thing. And so I think that's one of the reasons why people are you know, so less than enamored with sales and leadership, is because they're afraid that they have to go out and be this overtly, you know, pushy person. And what I think is interesting is this difference between hunting and fishing. And if you think about hunting, when you're hunting an animal, what does the animal do? The animal runs away because it knows that it's going to die. And so a lot of times people are out there hunting. They're doing what they were told. You got to go out and hunt, and they're always finding that their so-called prey is running away from them because they're afraid they're going to die. They're afraid they're going to lose their money. They're afraid they're going to have to give something up. But fishing is a really interesting sort of counterbalance to that. When you're fishing, the animal comes to you. And I had a guy pull me aside after one of my speeches, and he said, yeah, but here's your problem with your analogy. In both situations, the animal dies. And I said, no, that's not necessarily true. In fishing, we have a thing called catch and release. But I've never heard of something called shoot and release. You can't shoot and release, but you can catch and release. And fishing is based on primarily a couple of different fundamental things. You find when the fish is hungry, so you find when people are hungry. If people are hungry for what you have, it's a lot easier to sell and influence or lead. It's ultimately based on the kind of bait. You have to use the right kind of bait. Different fish require different kinds of bait, different presentations. Some you just throw in the water and let it sit there. Others you troll with it. Others you have to have a spinning lure that sort of spins. But if you get the right kind of bait, bait, the fish will come toward you. And I utilize that as an analogy for us. If we make ourselves into the right kind of bait, if we focus on our own personal change and transformation, other people are going to look at us and say, I want what that person has. I want to work for that person. I want to sell for that person. I want to buy from that person. I want to follow that person. So we don't have to go out and be hunters. We can be fishers. We can work on ourselves, change ourselves, so we become more attractive to other people. And that will actually increase our leadership, our influence, and our sales far more than trying to go out and get people and persuade people and, all those kinds of things that we've typically been taught.
Right. In your book, you do a great job of mentioning the typical salesman at the car delership who, makes them run away and they go buy from somebody else.
That is based on my own experience.
And it's so true. You're trying to build a long-term relationship, and when somebody, attacks at you, you run away.
Yeah.
Instead of going anywhere, they lose the sale over it.
Yep.
So I wanted to give you a chance to tell me any upcoming events you have coming on with the book coming out, or tell us about your website and where people can find you.
Yeah, actually, right now we're doing a great launch program where we're giving away a lot of free downloadable ebooks and audio programs. If they buy the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, it helps us get the word out, and it gives other people some great extras from a lot of great different people. Jim Rohn, I don't know if Brian Tracy's on there, but Zig Ziglar, Dennis Waitley, Mark Sanborn, who's a very popular business writer right now, and all sorts of different topics on finances and building your business and time management as freebies, over $500 worth of freebies on our website, and it's simply chriswidener.com. That's CHRIS WID as in David, N as in Nathan, ER, chriswidener.com. And if you go there, right on the front page, it'll have a link to where you can go buy the book, and you can take your choice to either go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and then come back to our site and download your freebie. So we're having a lot of fun with it and having some great success with it. I'm doing lots of radio interviews and lots of speaking coming up. I was in Salt Lake City this last week, and this week I'm in Oklahoma City. The week after that I'm in Las Vegas, and then I take a week-long tour through St. Petersburg, speaking 3 days in St. Petersburg, and then home for a week or two, and then off to Australia, to Melbourne. So doing lots of travel and lots of speaking, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy being able to encourage people in their leadership and their sales, and let them know that it can be fun, and you can make a lot of money and have fun and do good at the same time.
And if you go to your website, can we find where you're going to be if we're to see if you're going to be in the local area of
most of the time I'm brought in by private companies, and so I don't do a lot of public seminars, but when we do public seminars, they are listed on the chriswidener.com, but most of the time I'm brought in by a pharmaceutical company or a network marketing company or a insurance company or whatever. So most of the things that I do are closed sessions, but from time to time I do speak at some bigger events, and those would be on the website. Yep.
Well, excellent. And your other books as well can be found on your website, I assume?
Yep, they can be found on my website, or they can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. We've got lots of audio programs as well, 4 or 5 audio programs that are 7, 8, 9, 10 CDs each, and DVD programs from my television show Made for Success, where I've interviewed some of the world's most successful people, and lots and lots of resources there at chriswidener.com.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Chris. I highly recommend that everyone go out and get a copy of The Art of Influence. Just order it from online if you need to. If you can't get out, go out and get one. It is a very good read, very easy to read quickly, and all the messages are ones that you'll remember because the stories are very true and you can identify with them. The listeners out there, thank you for taking the time to join me today. Donna Marie will be back next week with another great guest to help you make the most of your business. As always, join the conversation at indiebusinessblog.com, where you can get Donna Marie's best tips and insights for indie business success. We'll see you there. In the meantime, enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way.
You're listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com.